Hey everybody, it is that Sunday School Girl of thatsundayschoolgirl.com. Welcome to the lesson for this Sunday, April 3rd. Let me first just say thank you because once again, you have supported me through one of the most challenging weeks of my first year of law school, and I appreciate it so very much. We had a major writing assignment that was due today, and I needed every possible moment to stay focused and to make sure that all of my details were buttoned up. So I appreciate you. And thank you to those of you who sent me notes of encouragement and support. Much appreciated. And they were like fuel and strength for me today. And as a matter of fact, you're probably seeing what I'll call my silly side. See, I'm a lot of fun, right? But this is I have not pulled an all-nighter in like a long time. I don't even know when that was. And last night I came awfully close. But you know what? I was not going to let them have that. I just couldn't do it. So I think I got about 3.5 hours. So this is what you get when I am on the fumes of a 3.5 hour nap. And you know, we don't do the whole sweats thing very often, but hey, it's probably going to happen one more time. Like in April, as we approach finals, y'all know how this works. But thank you for loving me through it. And I appreciate your being here. So I do need your help. So I'm going to ask you for two things. Number one, if you're not already subscribed, yes, you haven't subscribed yet, have you? You're watching this and you haven't, just click that little button down there for me. But thank you, because see how quick that was? Now you will never miss a video when they post on this channel. Secondly, I need you to please share this video. Just share it right now. Share it to your Facebook walls, to your other social media, because I don't want to be responsible for hundreds of people not being encouraged to be in Sunday school on Sunday morning and not having a chance to be a part of our awesome class. And so I appreciate you for subscribing and sharing so that we can get this lesson out to all of our friends, all of our classmates. So if you're new around here, welcome. You have just joined the largest cyber community of Sunday school students on the World Wide Web. And you know what? We're having a good time. But most of all, we are transforming our faith. These videos come to you each week for 3 reasons. Number one, to encourage you to make Sunday school part of your regular weekend routine. Secondly, when you go, because we've spent this time together, you are prepared to be a part and engage in the dialogue that's taking place in your classes. But most of all, when you leave, when we all leave, it's not that we know another memory verse or a Bible story, but we can activate God's word in our everyday lives in a meaningful way. And we can live intentionally. Speaking of intentional living, how many of you all got started with your journals this week? This is mine. I know I showed it. If you're following my Facebook page, you saw it yesterday. Look at that. Look at those skills. Look at that. Now, of course, it took me 4 days to do it because maybe I'm kind of a perfectionist and I'm a color in the lines kind of person, whatever. But you noticed if you got your journal that this was designed so that you could make it your own. And so I hope that you took some time to do that. For those who did not order the journal, what you're missing right now is the journal is designed to take us through all of our Sunday school lessons and the daily readings that go along with them. So I haven't filled out my lesson page for this week because I actually have another notebook, but I'll transfer my notes into here. And there are just a series of questions that are available for each lesson, but then every single day has a devotional page for the reading for the day. And there's plenty of space for those of you who are artistic. I'm sort of ashamed. I'm going to flash one of my pages here, but don't laugh because I draw stick men, suns, flowers, and hearts. That's like the limit of my artistic ability. But anyway, so there's plenty of space for you to capture what the reading is saying to you for the day. And then this particular one was about our words being, our speech being gracious, and it talked about it being like honey. So that was my honey pot. Like, don't judge me. I stepped out, moved past stickmen to the honey pot. But if you did not get an opportunity to purchase the inaugural journal, which is now sold out, there are samplers that are available. And if you'll check the website, thatsundayschoolgirl.com, and the TSSG store, you will see a link where you can download the weekly samplers. So this week's lesson is up, and I'll go ahead and put up the other 3 samplers as well. Maybe you didn't get the journal, or maybe you just want to see what it's about before you decide that you want to have the May journal. So go ahead and download the sampler, and I hope that you'll have a good time journaling with us. And thank you to those of you who shared your journal entries this week. If you shared your cover, thank you for that. We posted as many as we could. And if you're still working on them, I cannot wait to see yours. So please inbox me, and I can't wait to highlight your journal. Before I jump into the lesson, one other exciting thing personally this week is my sister's birthday is on Sunday. So I would be a bad big sister if I did not pause and say thank you to the Easter Bunny, who in 1983 brought me a baby sister. And so she's been such a blessing to our family. And I hope that your day is as amazing as you are. And I know that it will be, because that's just how she does it. So if you know my sister, please tell her happy birthday. And if you don't know my sister, you want to know my sister, you really do. She's a lot of fun too. But seriously, feel free to leave a comment. And she's stalking my wall anyway. She'll see them. She may even respond. So let's talk about the lesson for this week. Depending on your publisher, if you use the Standard Commentary, your title is Amazing Faith. If you use Power for Living, the title is Renewed Health. The Bible basis is St. Luke chapter 7, verses 1 through 10. The Bible truth: the centurion's faith in Jesus caused his servant to receive healing from Jesus. The memory verse is verse 9. And the lesson aim is that we will know the story of the centurion's faith and Jesus' healing of the centurion's servant. Experience strong faith for deliverance from illness like the centurion, and commit to regularly visiting the sick to pray with them. So I try each week as we walk through our lessons together to share from the most genuine and authentic places in my own life. In my opinion, social media has done such a job on us, making us believe that everyone, everywhere, all of the time is living the most amazingly wonderful, ridiculously fantastic, never a bad hair day, never a bad selfie, never a facial blemish, and always perfect makeup kind of life. That's simply not true, because at some point, difficulty will find us, challenge will find us. And I think that's why these lessons over the last few weeks have been so important, because they've addressed specific areas in our faith, so that as we approach those difficulties and we encounter those things that we don't understand, it's our faith that gives us the confidence and the assurance in who our God is, and helps us know how to navigate that landscape. So this week was interesting because with this lesson in particular, in all honesty, it's an area that I've struggled. Not so much because I don't believe that God has incredible healing power, but I remember being disappointed on 2 very distinct occasions when I believed God with everything I had in me for someone else, and it simply was not His will. So this week, every day after class, just about every day, I went to the hospital to sit with my grandfather, and I did my homework there. Now, if you know my grandfather, he is fine. All is well. He was released on today. But as I drove in on Tuesday, I remembered that it was on this very week, 5 years ago, on the exact same day, in the exact same hospital, that I had to go when my father was very ill on his last day. And the same hospital, the same parking lot, the same entrance of the doors, walking through this, it just made those feelings come back. And I remember what it felt like to believe God with everything that I had. And we sat and we prayed and we had the support of family members. And again, it was simply not God's will. And although it was hurtful at the time, and I certainly didn't understand, I can stand back and say now that it is most definitely my faith. And it is what I know to be right and true about God that helps us to manage, and helped us to manage, continues to help us manage through that process. And so being in that space this week and just being around people all week who were not well was very timely as we're talking about illness in a lesson on this week. When verse 1 of our lesson opens, we clearly see that we are in transition. We know that because Jesus has just finished talking. Well, who was he talking to and what was he talking about? You'll have to go back and peek in chapter 6 for that. But there you'll find the Sermon on the Plains. What is the Sermon on the Plains? Here's the best way I can describe it. When I've interviewed for jobs in the past, at the end they will typically say, "Are there any questions we could answer for you?" My first question is always, "Can you give me a profile of someone who does exceptionally well in this role?" Well, Jesus has done just that. He has given us the profile of an exceptional, faith filled kingdom believer. And he's now returning home to Capernaum. He's no longer welcome in his hometown, so Capernaum has become his new home, his ministry base, his ministry headquarters. And you know how that feels. You've worked all day long. All you want to do is come home and get into your favorite easy chair with a glass of iced tea and enjoy the news. And inevitably, someone has need of you. Well, that's just what's happened here. And there is a centurion whose servant has taken ill. Now, what's a centurion? Let's talk about that. This centurion is a Gentile, a Roman officer who has command of about 100 people. Centurion, century, 100. And this centurion has a servant who he clearly holds in high esteem. Now that's kind of interesting, right? Because a servant, you would not think that the officer would be overly invested in a servant, but here there seems to be a very personal relationship such that he is extending himself. And again, this officer is a Gentile and he believes and knows that Jesus can do something about it, but he does not feel comfortable because there is not relationship between he and Jesus. And so in verse 3, he hears of Jesus and he sends some of the Jewish elders to ask Jesus to come and to heal his servant. Now, when these elders get to Jesus, they basically go in immediately with what they need. We need you to come because he needs you to come and heal his servant. Listen, you got to do this for him. You got to hook him up. He's a good man. He's worthy. He's deserving. Well, why was he worthy and why was he deserving in their opinions? What was this really about? Well, again, we've established that he's an officer. So we know that he has authority. He has command. But we also learn in verse 5 that they say he loves our nation. He loves us. He's not even from here. He's a Roman citizen and he loves us. And he also, here's the key, he has built our synagogue. So we also learn that he's not only powerful, but he's got money. He had enough capital to fund the building of the synagogue. So Jesus goes with them, and before he arrives at the centurion's house, the centurion meets him and he says, "You know what? Don't even bother, Jesus. That's okay, because I'm not even worthy for you to come under my roof." Now, two things about that. First of all, perhaps he was talking about his own worthiness and realizing that he himself was not in a right place of relationship. He didn't have relationship with Jesus. And so for that reason, I don't deserve it. But secondly, note that this would have been a Jewish individual coming into a Gentile home, which also was uncustomary at the time. And so he says, don't even worry about coming. But I'll tell you what, if you just stay where you are and just send your word, I know that your word alone is enough to still heal my servant. Now, interesting again, he said, you can stay where you are. He's even acknowledged that I don't have it all right. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve this. And yet he still knew and felt that he could ask Jesus for what he needed. Let me back up again. When the elders came, they said he's deserving. When the centurion spoke for himself, he says, I don't deserve this. And again, in spite of the fact that he knew that he didn't deserve it, he was still comfortable with making the ask of Jesus. The centurion, for the most part, says, listen, Jesus, I understand how this works. I'm a man of authority. So when I say to one, go, he goes. If I tell one to come, he'll come. If I say run, they say how fast. If I say jump, they'll say how high. So I understand that as a man of authority, when I put words out there, that my words produce. And he wasn't saying that to toot his own horn. He was saying to Jesus that I understand that you are a man of authority and I understand the power that your word has. And so that's why he says, if you'll just send your word, your word would be enough to heal my servant. Well, verse 9 tells us that Jesus was amazed when he heard this. I said last week that God does things to amaze us. And here, for the only time in the New Testament, we see that Jesus is wowed by something. He is wowed by this level of faith. This is the level of faith that it takes to amaze Jesus. And he's amazed because he says, even my own people don't have this level of faith. Well, the next thing we see in verse 10, we don't see a performance in between. We don't see a lot of dramatics. But when they returned home, they found all was well and that the servant had been healed. Here were my key learnings of the week, and there were several. Again, we have a Gentile officer who is making a request of Jesus. And he believes that Jesus can perform it. He wants him to, but just the same, he realizes that Jesus could say no. So I think it's important that we always expect a yes, believe that yes is possible, but we have to trust God even if he says no. Next, I thought about how we engage with non-members. Again, looking at a Jewish and Gentile interaction and just how this entire piece was facilitated. I think it's important as we look at how we engage people who may not be like us, people who may not worship like us, people who may not understand like us, that we engage with an openness, we engage in love, and we engage in mutual respect. I thought about that relationship of the centurion and the servant. And again, for me, how interesting that an officer took this level of interest in a servant, that he would speak for him, that he would ask, that he would intercede for him for his healing. So my question is, who speaks for you? Who is willing to speak for you? Who is vested enough in you? Who sees value in you and will speak for you? And just the opposite of that, who are you investing in? Who do you intercede for? Who do you see or place value in that you would be willing to step out for and to speak for? Next, don't keep sending people to Jesus. Go for yourself. I think a lot of times especially when we feel like we don't quite measure up or we don't quite have things right, that we'll sin and we'll say, well, you pray for me. Or we'll say, well, my mother prayed for me or my grandmother prayed for me. At some point, you have to stop sending people to Jesus and you have to get to Jesus for yourself. Next, don't let the devil make you believe that just because you see yourself and recognize yourself in spaces that are unworthy. The centurion said, I am not worthy for this to happen. But the enemy will put us in a place where we say we're not worthy and therefore we take no action at all. But here again, we saw that the centurion, even seeing his own unworthiness, still had the confidence to ask Jesus for what he needed. Don't ever believe, even when you see yourself as unworthy, that you cannot ask God to work on your behalf. And lastly, always be in a place where you can hear a word from God, because we saw in the lesson that all it took was his word, and his word had the powerful ability to change that situation. That is the lesson for this week. I would love to hear what your learnings were from the lesson. Don't forget on Sunday to share your Sunday school selfies. Hashtag that Sunday school selfie and that Sunday school girl so that I'll know I have permission to post. If you missed this week's gallery, you have to go and check it out. Easter was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I am so excited because this ministry crosses so broadly into all denominations, all racial groups, you name it. And it was great. Easter was fantastic. So I look forward to your post for this week. And if you have not downloaded the app, you are missing out. You're missing out on great fun, but you can do that. So don't forget to download it from the iTunes or Google store, and you will simply search That Sunday School Girl, and you will have your app on your phone too. All right, that's it for me. Have an awesome week, and I will see you in Sunday school. Bye-bye.